Welcome to Viltrum. Part 1, The Bloodstained Utopia. Welcome to Viltrum. Take a good look at this glittering jewel of the cosmos. If you were to believe the official imperial records, you are looking at the absolute pinnacle of cosmic civilization. The Viltrum Empire paints its home world as a breathtaking paradise, a lone blue marble floating in a distant galaxy, boasting cool, sweeping oceans and majestic, hyper-advanced metropolises that put Earth's greatest cities to shame. Their architecture doesn't just touch the sky, it defies gravity, constructed with a level of technology that is centuries, perhaps millennia, ahead of anything our primitive human minds have ever conceived. The Empire's propaganda machine feeds the universe a beautiful, seductive lie: that the Viltrumites are a benevolent, savior race. They claim that their unmatched genetic superiority, their godlike physical strength, and their boundless technological wonders are gifts meant to be shared. According to their holy texts, the Grand Leadership Council established a selfless world betterment committee. Its public mission? To seek out lesser, developing worlds, deploy advanced scientific fleets, and offer absolute protection and technological upgrades to the primitive species of the universe. They wrap their expansion in the warm blanket of salvation, promising an intergalactic golden age where war, famine, and disease are wiped from existence. It sounds like an absolute dream. But the terrifying truth is that this beautiful utopia is built entirely on a foundation of bone, ash, and absolute deception. Beneath the polished chrome and shimmering glass of Viltrum lies a culture of pure, unadulterated horror. The Viltrumites are not peaceful saviors. They are hyper-militant social Darwinists who worship raw, brutal power and view compassion as a fatal genetic defect. From the moment a Viltrumite child is born, their life is a relentless, agonizing gauntlet designed to test their threshold for pain and physical pressure. Weakness is treated like a localized cancer. It is aggressively rooted out and violently destroyed. This brutal conditioning breeds a race of monsters that are practically unstoppable. They possess planet-cracking physical strength, skin that can withstand the heat of a star, and the terrifying ability to fly through the vacuum of space at faster than light speeds. Their entire society is bound by a fanatical, cult-like loyalty to the state, cemented by bizarre, rigid cultural laws. Look closely at the male populace, and you will notice an unsettling detail. Every single man sports an identical, sharply groomed mustache. This isn't a fleeting fashion trend. It is a mandatory, chilling mark of absolute allegiance to the Empire's heritage, an unwavering homage to the planet's very first, most bloodthirsty monarch, who wore the exact same look. For a human watching from Earth, this should send a massive shiver down your spine. Historically speaking, whenever our world has encountered all-powerful, expansionist leaders who mandate distinct mustaches and demand absolute genetic perfection, it has ended in catastrophic global tragedy. Viltrum took that exact fascistic nightmare and upscaled it to a cosmic level. The true architect of this galactic nightmare was a figure shrouded in myth and absolute terror, Emperor Argul. Rising from the shadows of an ancient, forgotten era, Argul unified the warring factions of Viltrum and crowned himself the inaugural absolute ruler of the Empire. He was an uncompromising tyrant who valued raw dominance above all else, but he possessed a terrifying, calculating wisdom that matched his bottomless cruelty. Argul believed that the universe was inherently chaotic, and that only the supreme strength of Viltrum could enforce true order. Under his iron fist, the Viltrumite Council was formed, and the Empire launched its true, blood-soaked campaign of cosmic conquest. Argul's methodology was as brilliant as it was horrific. He didn't just conquer worlds, he systematically strip-mined them of their resources, enslaving or exterminating the native populations to fuel Viltrum's rapid industrial and scientific evolution. During his multi-millennial reign, this stolen wealth funded a staggering golden age. The Empire eradicated all internal sickness, engineered cures for famine, and unlocked the secrets of functional immortality, allowing pure-blooded Viltrumites to live for thousands of years in peak physical condition. When their rapid industrialization triggered a catastrophic planet-wide climate collapse on Viltrum, Argol's absolute authority forced the population to re-engineer their entire global biosphere, turning their ruined world back into a climate-controlled paradise. Argol was fiercely worshipped as a living god, and he spent centuries training his young son to inherit this vast, bleeding empire. But absolute power always breeds absolute betrayal. In the peak of his glory, Argol was shockingly assassinated by one of his most trusted subjects, a high-ranking Viltrumite named Thetis. Thetis had grown utterly consumed by horror at the endless, trillion-strong pile of bodies left in the wake of Argol's crusade. Seizing a moment of vulnerability, Thetis slaughtered the emperor, split the heart of the empire wide open, and fled into the deep cosmos. This single, cataclysmic act of betrayal triggered an immediate, terrifying power vacuum on Viltrum, plunging the golden utopia into an era of unprecedented apocalyptic madness. Part 2. The Purge and the Rise of Thrag. The assassination of Emperor Argol didn't just break the chain of royal succession, it completely shattered the collective sanity of the Viltrumite race. With their living god dead and his secret heir hidden away in the deep cosmos by Argol's final defensive measures, a terrifying power vacuum opened up over Viltrum. What followed was an era of apocalyptic madness known to history as the Great Purge. On Earth, when a fanatical cult of personality loses its supreme leader, the top generals usually turn on each other in backroom betrayals. On Viltrum, that political infighting manifested as a planet-wide, no-holds-barred civil war of absolute extermination. The social Darwinist philosophy that Argol had cultivated turned inward with weaponized fury. The Viltrumite population divided into savage factions, each claiming to be the true, pure realization of the Empire's destiny. Because Viltrumites possess godlike physical power, their civil war wasn't fought with standard artillery or carpet bombings. It was fought hand to hand, tearing the very crust of the planet apart. Super beings collided in the skies at max speeds, ripping each other limb from limb and painting their glittering, gravity-defying skyscrapers in rivers of their own blood. There were no battle lines, no rules of engagement, and absolutely no mercy. It was a chaotic, multi-year meat grinder, where neighbours slaughtered neighbours and parents turned on children, all driven by the mad belief that only the absolute strongest deserved to breathe the air of Viltrum. When the dust finally settled over the scorched, ruined landscapes of Viltrum, the true horror of the Great Purge was laid bare. The civil war had successfully ended, but at a catastrophic cost. More than half of the planet's entire population had been brutally murdered by their own kin. The sprawling, beautiful metropolises that had defined their golden age were reduced to hollowed-out concrete husks and smoking craters filled with millions of superpowered corpses. Yet, the Viltrumite Council, or what was left of it, did not view this catastrophic population collapse as a tragedy. To them, the Great Purge was a wild success. By aggressively weeding out every single individual who possessed even a microscopic shred of weakness, hesitation, or compassion, the survivors had forced their own species to hyper-evolve. The Viltrumites who walked out of those ash heaps were no longer just dominant humanoids. They were the most ruthless, battle-hardened, and relentless apex predators the universe had ever seen. They immediately set to work rebuilding their ruined infrastructure, constructing even taller, more menacing spires over the graves of their fallen brothers. They remained completely steadfast in their fanatical belief that might makes right. The council decreed that until Emperor Argol's true blood heir could be located, the Empire would be ruled by the undisputed strongest survivor of the Civil War, a warrior who would take the absolute title of Grand Regent. The monster chosen by the council to lead this terrifying new era was a man named Thrag. Thrag was not just a survivor of the Civil War, he was a genetic nightmare bred and trained from the absolute moment of his birth to be the ultimate weapon. His survival of the blood-soaked Great Purge wasn't just luck, it was undeniable proof of his absolute physical supremacy. Taking the throne as Grand Regent, Thrag looked out over his half-dead, hyper-aggressive empire and issued a chilling vow to his people. He swore to hunt down Thetis, the great betrayer, execute him in the most agonizing way possible, and resume Emperor Argol's interrupted mission of absolute cosmic domination. Under Thrag's iron fist, the old, deceptively named World Betterment Committee, was completely dismantled. In its place, he established the ominous World Conquering Committee, a highly streamlined, terrifyingly efficient military agency designed for one single purpose: the systematic subjugation of the entire galaxy. Thrag weaponized the remnants of his population, transforming every single surviving Viltrumite into an elite cosmic conqueror. He instituted a rigid, mandatory three-step invasion doctrine that would ensure no planet could ever resist their wrath. First, advanced stealth scout vessels would traverse light years to identify resource-rich worlds populated by inferior species. Second, hidden military outposts would be constructed in nearby asteroid belts or moons, allowing Viltrumite agents to secretly infiltrate the target society. Third, when the planet was sufficiently compromised, a strike team of elite soldiers would drop from the sky, announce the invasion, and demand absolute, unconditional surrender. The universe had no idea the absolute terror that was about to be unleashed. Part 3. The Galactic Onslaught and the Unopa Tragedy. With Grand Regent Thrag pulling the strings, the newly formed World Conquering Committee launched a wave of terror that set the entire galaxy on fire. The mandatory three-step invasion doctrine operated with the cold, unfeeling precision of a factory assembly line. Across vast star systems, unsuspecting civilizations looked up at their night skies, completely unaware that their doom had already arrived. Advanced Viltrumite scout ships, utilizing cloaking technology far beyond cosmic standards, mapped out every defensive grid, political vulnerability, and natural resource of targeted planets. Once the scouting phase was complete, hidden military staging grounds were constructed on nearby dead moons or inside asteroid belts. From these outposts, undercover Viltrumite agents infiltrated the target societies, blending into the populace or manipulating local governments to create internal destabilization. By the time the final phase was triggered, the trap was already sprung. Elite Viltrumite strike teams would drop from orbit like falling stars, shattering the sound barrier and landing directly in the centers of government. They delivered a chilling ultimatum: swear absolute, unwavering loyalty to the Viltrum Empire, surrender all sovereign resources, and bow before the Grand Regent, or face total annihilation. In exchange, the Empire offered a poisoned chalice, advanced medical tech, the elimination of disease, and internal protection. But the cost was the total, permanent enslavement of their global identity. Most worlds, paralyzed by the raw, godlike display of Viltrumite power, collapsed and surrendered without firing a single shot. They chose the chains of submission over the certainty of death. But some species possessed a fierce, independent pride that refused to bow to tyrants. The most tragic example of this defiance occurred on the planet Unopa. Unopa was a breathtaking, enlightened world inhabited by a brilliant, highly intelligent species known as the Onopans. Unlike the industrialized war machine of Viltrum, the Unopans had spent millennia perfecting a flawless, rare harmony between bleeding-edge technology and the natural preservation of their ecosystem. They were a peaceful, deeply philosophical civilization that believed the universe should be governed by reason, science, and cooperation. When Thrag's conquest fleet arrived in the atmosphere of Unopa and demanded their unconditional surrender, the Unopans did the unthinkable. They flatly refused. They believed their sovereign right to exist outweighed the fascistic demands of the Viltrum Empire. The Unopans severely underestimated the bottomless cruelty of their invaders. They assumed that because they were a peaceful, advanced culture, some form of diplomatic negotiation or scientific deterrent could hold the Viltrumites at bay. They had absolutely no idea that to a Viltrumite, peace was synonymous with worthlessness, and defiance was a crime punishable only by a total, brutal death sentence. The Viltrumite retaliation was swift, calculated, and utterly apocalyptic. Within a matter of days, the paradise world of Unopa was systematically transformed into a smoking, blood-drenched graveyard. The Unopans attempted to fight back, unleashing highly advanced energy weapons, automated defense grids, and sophisticated planetary shields that they believed could repel any physical threat. But these technological marvels were utterly useless against the raw, planet-shattering physical trauma delivered by pure-blooded Viltrumites. The invaders moved through the sky like living missiles, punching clean through orbital defense platforms and tearing planetary shield generators apart with their bare hands. Sprawling Unapan cities, celebrated across the cosmos for their beautiful integration with nature, were reduced to pulverized concrete, ash, and rivers of blood in a matter of hours. The Viltrumites didn't just target military installations, they actively hunted down civilians, crushing rebellions with a level of sadistic brutality meant to send a warning to the rest of the galaxy. If Viltrum could not possess the loyalty of a world, that world would simply be wiped from the galactic map. The Unapan population was decimated, their vibrant culture entirely erased, and total unyielding imperial control was cemented over the scorched remains of their planet. A tiny, traumatized handful of Unapan survivors managed to flee into the deep dark of space before the planetary blockade completely locked down. Seeking refuge at hidden stellar outposts, these refugees established desperate breeding programs, attempting to genetically engineer a savior, a super warrior strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with a Viltrumite. Though these early genetic experiments were largely deemed failures, the surviving Unapans would soon find a powerful, secretive ally waiting for them in the shadows of the cosmos. Part 4, The Weaponized Plague and the Secret Apocalypse. The scattered, traumatized refugees of the Unapan genocide refused to let their species die out in silence. Operating from hidden outposts across the dark fringes of the cosmos, their scientists worked around the clock on a desperate genetic salvation project. Their goal was to engineer a biological savior, a warrior possessing physical durability and strength capable of matching the godlike power of a Viltrumite. The pinnacle of this project was a newborn infant named Alan. Alan was subjected to agonizing experimental gene splicing before his birth, modifying his muscular structure and cellular density. Tragically, the project was ultimately deemed a failure by the desperate Unapan leadership. While Alan grew to possess incredible physical power, he was still not strong enough to defeat a pure-blooded Viltrumite soldier in a one-on-one deathmatch. However, Alan's unique nature caught the attention of a mysterious figure orchestrating a grand resistance from the shadows. Thedas, the Great Betrayer. After assassinating Emperor Argul, Thedas had spent centuries organizing the disparate, terrified species of the universe into a unified front known as the Coalition of Planets. Recognizing Alan's unbreakable spirit and vast potential, Thedas personally recruited the young Unapan, assigning him the highly dangerous role of planet evaluator. Alan was tasked with traversing the galaxy to test the defensive capabilities of various worlds, while secretly reporting any and all signs of encroaching Viltrumite vanguard activity back to the Coalition's high command. While the Coalition of Planets built up its conventional military fleets, Thedas knew that conventional laser fire and orbital dreadnoughts would never be enough to stop an army of planet-cracking conquerors. To defeat a biological apex predator, they needed a biological weapon. Deep within a maximum security coalition research facility, Thedas and a team of rogue geneticists utilized Thedas's own royal Viltrumite DNA to engineer a horrific, targeted bioweapon, the Scourge virus. This synthetic supervirus was designed with a terrifying, singular objective: to bypass the legendary, near-impervious immune systems of the Viltrumite race. Once introduced into the atmosphere, the Scourge virus tore through the Imperial population like wildfire. The symptoms were swift and utterly catastrophic. The virus actively attacked the unique cellular physiology that granted Viltrumites their godlike gifts, systematically stripping away their invulnerability, destabilizing their flight capabilities, and leaving their muscles to rapidly atrophy. The Imperial medical centers, which had easily conquered every natural disease in the cosmos, were completely powerless against this engineered plague. There was no cure, no vaccine, and absolutely no treatment. The only way to survive the infection was to possess an exceptionally resilient, elite immune system capable of fighting off the cellular degradation and letting the virus run its agonizing course. For the vast majority of the Imperial populace, their vaunted genetic superiority meant absolutely nothing. The deployment of the Scourge virus resulted in a quiet, localized apocalypse that brought the terrifying Viltrum Empire to its absolute knees. The numbers were staggering and completely kept secret from the rest of the cosmos. The virus successfully wiped out an astonishing 99.9% of the entire Viltrumite population. The universe's most feared, unstoppable conquerors were brought to the absolute brink of total extinction by a microscopic, synthetic organism. It was the ultimate poetic twist of karma. The self-proclaimed gods who viewed weakness as a disease were nearly wiped off the galactic map by a literal plague. When Grand Regent Thrag looked out across the Empire, the horrific truth was laid bare. There were fewer than 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites left alive in the entire universe. If the coalition of planets, or any of their thousands of enslaved victim worlds, ever discovered this catastrophic population collapse, the Empire would be instantly overrun and utterly destroyed by a vengeful galaxy. Acting with ruthless coldness, Thrag instituted an absolute galactic media blackout, keeping the effects of the virus a total state secret. The massive war fleets were quietly docked, and all loud, full-scale planetary invasions were immediately ordered to a halt. The Empire's core directive completely shifted overnight from aggressive cosmic conquest to an emergency, desperate struggle for biological survival. To prevent the permanent death of their species, Thrag and the surviving council had to pivot to a radical, highly dangerous new strategy: crossbreeding their remaining lineage with compatible alien species across the deep cosmos. Part 5. The Earth Mission and the Invisible Vanguard. With less than 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites remaining in existence, Grand Regent Thrag's empire was nothing more than a hollow ghost ship. The fierce, social Darwinist warlords who had once slaughtered billions were now trapped in a desperate, terrifying race against their own permanent extinction. The massive armada of warships was completely useless without soldiers to pilot them, forcing the Viltrumite Council to completely rewrite their playbook. Thrag issued a top-secret, absolute mandate across the surviving ranks. The remaining Viltrumites were ordered to disperse throughout the deep cosmos, locate alien species whose genetic makeup mirrored their own, and aggressively breed with them to artificially inflate their numbers. However, this survival directive quickly ran into a massive biological roadblock. As the remaining soldiers attempted to crossbreed with various conquered species throughout the galaxy, the resulting offspring were almost always weak, unstable hybrids. The alien genetics continuously diluted the pristine Viltrumite DNA, producing children who lacked the legendary invulnerability, flight, and planet-cracking physical strength required to maintain the Empire's dominance. If they kept breeding with inferior species, the pure Viltrumite lineage would eventually fade away into nothingness anyway. They desperately needed a planet inhabited by a species whose genetic architecture was a near-flawless match to their own, a genetic goldmine that could perfectly preserve their godlike traits. That desperate search through the infinite dark of the cosmos eventually led the Viltrumite Council to a routine, backwater solar system located thousands of light years away from the Imperial core. There, floating like an unsuspecting blue marble, sat planet Earth. Under any normal historical circumstance, the Viltrum Empire would have completely written Earth off as an insignificant, primitive rock. Its human inhabitants were physically fragile, technologically centuries behind cosmic standards, and entirely oblivious to the wider galaxy. But to the desperate Viltrumite scientists, the humans were the ultimate biological miracle. Initial genetic scans revealed a staggering truth. Human DNA was an unbelievable 99% compatible with Viltrumite physiology. Unlike every other alien species they had tested across the stars, a child born from a Viltrumite and a human would not be a weakened hybrid. The human genetics would seamlessly intertwine with the Viltrumite DNA, allowing the child to inherit the full, uncompromised suite of superpowers: the near invulnerability, the faster-than-light speed, and the devastating physical strength. Earth wasn't just a target for conquest anymore. It was the literal holy grail for their species' survival. But because their remaining numbers were so dangerously low, Thrag could not risk sending a traditional, loud invasion fleet that might tip off the coalition of planets. Instead, he turned back to their classic playbook, deploying a single elite vanguard soldier to infiltrate the planet from within. The absolute monster chosen for this high-stakes, solo infiltration mission was one of the most ruthless, battle-tested, and fiercely loyal soldiers left in the Empire, a man named Nolan. Sometime around the human year 2002, Nolan crossed the vast expanse of space and quietly descended into Earth's atmosphere. He didn't arrive with explosions or an announcement of doom. Instead, he seamlessly integrated into human society, adopting the quiet, unassuming secret identity of a best-selling fiction author named Nolan Grayson. To the public, he presented himself as a benevolent, caped savior, a godlike superhero who took the inspiring moniker of Omni-Man. For nearly 2 decades, Nolan played the role of Earth's ultimate protector to absolute perfection. He joined forces with the global authorities, fought alongside the planet's premier superhero team, the Guardians of the Globe, and worked closely with the secretive Global Defense Agency. He even married a human woman and fathered a half-human son, masking his cold, imperial programming beneath the warm facade of a loving family man. But beneath that beautiful, heroic lie, Omni-Man was carefully executing the first 2 steps of the World-Conquering Committee's ancient doctrine. He was mapping Earth's absolute weaknesses, cataloguing its defenses, and quietly preparing the ground for the day the remaining Viltrumites would arrive to claim their genetic prize. And that is the absolute blood-soaked history of Viltrum, leading right up to the explosive events of the first season of Invincible. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.